everybody. I hope you're well today. Today I've got a very interesting subject I'm going to cover, and that is the gift of discerning of spirits. And it's a very misunderstood gift. It's not intuition or the gift of suspicion. You need to know that from the beginning. It's not that because you've had a previous experience about something, you are now suspicious and you mistrust somebody, and so you feel you have discerned something. Maybe that's your previous experience that's speaking to you. A lot of people, they say, oh, I'm a good judge of character about themselves. They say, I'm a good judge of character because I can discern things about them. But if you've had issues before with people letting you down, with people lying to you, a whole lot of things, you'll find that you will have a natural reason to mistrust people you don't know. And so don't go around thinking that you have a gift of discerning of spirits because you always pick out the problems with people. That's also not what the whole thing is about. Discerning of spirits is not about finding fault with everybody and being able to say who's wrong and who's a bad person. So the gift of discerning of spirits is given to us to discern or differentiate between what is good and what is evil, what is of the Spirit of God and of the enemy, and to protect us in our decision making and involvement with others. That's why we have it. And it's experienced when we can see something or read between the lines, and the Spirit gives us insight into a situation. So that's the difference. When you've had a bad experience, it's your experience that's speaking to you more than the Spirit of God giving you insight into what somebody is saying or something that is happening. And so we need to learn to discern the difference between, is this the Spirit of God? And the way we do that is when it's about a person. The Spirit of God maybe will show you something about a person to protect you. But the main reason the Spirit of God will show you something about another person is so you can pray for that person. Not go around and tell everybody that you discerned that this person is a bad person and this is what they're doing behind everybody's backs. God always shows us something with a redemptive purpose. So you've got to remember that. A lot of people discern things about people and they run away from them. And they don't realize God's redemptive purpose. This is all part of prophetic ministry. The gift of discerning of spirits falls into prophetic ministry because you have to discern what is God, what is the enemy, what is good, what is not. And so when you can discern something from the heart of God, God will never show you something wrong about somebody else to judge them. That's not how the Spirit of God operates. It's to restore them and to redeem them. So you pray for them until God says, go and say something to them. Don't just blab out what you feel God has shown you. It's the same with every prophetic word that you get. Pray for the person. See God's restorative and redemptive purpose if He's showing you something that's negative. It's because He can trust you to show you something. So 1 Corinthians 12, 5-10 says this: there are diversities of gifts, but the same Spirit. There are differences of ministries, but the same Lord. And there are diversities of activities, but it is the same God who works all in all. But the manifestation of the Spirit is given to each one for the profit of all. For to one is given how the Spirit of God wants to manifest Himself through you. It's not your gift. It's the Spirit of God revealing Himself through you. That should make it even easier to remember that the Spirit of God will not reveal Himself as a judge or someone who condemns, but restores. For the profit of all, to one is given the word of wisdom through the Spirit, to another the word of knowledge through the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit, to another gifts of healings by the same Spirit, to another the working of miracles, to another prophecy, to another discerning of spirits, to another different kinds of tongues, to another the interpretation of tongues. So we need to learn how to exercise the gift of discerning of spirits just as much as we learn how to exercise the other gifts. We practice how to prophesy, we practice the word of knowledge, so we need to practice and learn how to exercise discerning of spirits. Hebrews 5:14 says this: solid food belongs to those who are of full age, That is, those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil. So we need to have our senses exercised to discern, is this good or is this right? And this is something you can do with the Spirit of God. You don't need someone to come and confirm something you've picked up. You just go to God and you say, God, confirm this to me. And He wants you to engage with Him. And He wants you to, what you feel in your gut instinct, you say, is this God warning me, or is this my previous experience? Very important to discern the difference between the two. And God will confirm if it's something He's warning you about. Don't get involved in this business decision that you're making. You're picking something up in the spiritual realm. The Spirit of God is coming alongside and revealing a caution to you. And you exercise this, you practice this, so that the next time you have to make a decision, you know, I've discerned something. Rory always says that I'm very good at discerning things, that if there's a caution, it's like I used to think it was just my gut instinct, but I've learned over time, I did discern that we were making a mistake. I discerned that it wasn't the leading of the Spirit of God. But mostly you learn this thing by making mistakes and then looking back, because God is gracious enough to help us and restore us when we make mistakes, when we think we've discerned something and we haven't, or we have discerned and we've ignored it, thinking it was our own imagination, or thinking that we were being critical about someone or something, but it was the Spirit of God giving us a bit of a caution. So to discern also means to diagnose, to have a diagnosis about something. When we understand that God entrusts us with His heart for others, He shows us a diagnosis of something, and He's giving us the opportunity to pray. Remember that it's not the diagnosis so you can go and tell everybody about it. And then when something happens, you can say, you see, I told you. That's not the heart of God. When you have the gift of discerning of spirits, be very cautious with it, be very careful with it. Keep it to yourself. It's between yourself and God most of the time. So let me see what else I have here. I just want to encourage you that this gift is very important today, because there is so much that we need to be wary of. Not other Christians, not churches, but to be wary of the tricks, the deception of the enemy that is trying to come upon us. So we need the gift of discerning of spirits activated in our lives today. So remember this, if you go to a doctor and you sit there and you say, these are my symptoms, and he says, okay, I see you've got symptoms, just go home. And he doesn't give you any answer. You wouldn't pay the bill, or you would have to for the consultation, but he wouldn't really help you. And it's the same when it comes to you and I discerning something, that we are no help if we just get the diagnosis and we don't do anything with it. We just walk around and say, oh, I've diagnosed something. You've got to get the help, and that's where the involvement of the Spirit of God and your praying comes into play. So what do you do with what you discern? I'll give this to you very practically and very quickly. We are not supposed to be looking for problems in people's lives or telling everyone around us that we knew the problems, but we discern for a purpose. I've covered that. We pray. Prayer is the key to anything that you discern by the Spirit. Whether you are sure or not that God is showing you something, just pray. It's the first and most important thing to do. Learn not to second guess yourself is also very important. I've done that. I've second guessed something because I thought this is my imagination. And as I said, over time I've learned that this is the Spirit of God revealing something to me. Many people think that they're seeing something from the natural point of view, or their previous hurts or problems rear its head and say, no, that's your imagination. So learn to discern between the two. Don't become religious or legalistic. Don't go around looking for problems and telling other people what to do because you think you have this gift of discerning of spirits. Keep quiet. Discerning of spirits, it's very important to keep quiet unless God says, and most times He doesn't say. It's a secret He shared with you. When you have a misconceived expectation of others, you'll be looking for problems. and will become critical instead of discerning out of love. It's easy to be critical instead of discerning. It's easy to look for problems, expect problems to rear their heads, and become critical and judgmental instead of love. That's love, the power of love. When you remember this now, remember this. This is, if you forget everything I've said, this is it. When you're being critical or judgmental, when you are unteachable because you think you know it all, when you bring up your past experience because you haven't forgiven somebody because of what they've done, you cannot discern correctly. There are people who in churches who are very spiritual and very sincere, and they do hear from God, but they cannot discern correctly if they are not willing to be corrected or questioned. They're discerning out of past experiences. So be teachable, be flexible, be open to somebody saying, oh, maybe you shouldn't have said this. Maybe you should have just prayed about it. Because then if you put the walls up, hearing from other people, you stop discerning. Then it's you. It's your past experience. So be teachable enough so that you remain discerning and flexible. And here's the other thing you need to remember. When there's no redemptive purpose for what you've discerned, it's not coming from the Spirit of God. If what you have discerned is just going to break people down, cause destruction, cause disagreements, it's not coming from the Spirit of God. The Spirit of God is always wanting to bring people together, to restore situations, to restore someone who may be out of line back into line with their purposes in God. So these are just a few of the important things about the gift of discerning of spirits that we need to remember as prophetic people. So you're called to have a redemptive, a transformational, transformative word in your mouth that will bring restoration, healing, wholeness to people and to situations. So, and I really want to emphasize this thing again, that if you are unteachable, you're not discerning correctly. If you think I'm sticking to my guns, I know God spoke to me, you're being unteachable. So maybe you have heard correctly and you're very sincere about it. But if you just keep on going at it and saying, I've got to share this thing. I know some people who have had major words for churches, organizations, people, and they've stuck to their guns and they've said, this is it, and they got themselves into trouble, even though the word could have been right, but they weren't willing to wait for the right time and to be teachable and to receive help from people who had more wisdom than they had at the time. So be teachable, but keep on discerning. Say, God, teach me how to discern. Teach me how to hear from the Spirit of God, and He wants you to live a life of discerning. So be encouraged with that today.